Welcome back into the ASUG News Studio. My name is Tom Whalgum. I am co-editorial director of asugnews.com. Well, we've got a great presenter here in the studio, Chris Blakeley from NASA. Welcome.
Thank you.
You, besides working for a very cool agency, you did a great presentation on Monday about dashboard reporting at the federal government. And we could talk a lot about the Mars Rover landing, all that great stuff, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind the reports needed to ensure that the projects can come off, that the rover can get there. Can you talk a little bit about, your general kind of impression of that, and then we'll dig down into your presentation, because I think it's a really cool topic.
Sure. Well, the rover's a good example. I mean, there were roughly 10,000 people that touched some piece of that rover before it was able to do what it did. And a lot of times, I do a lot of designs for dashboards, and people will come to me with just a concept and say, I'd like to get X on a page, and I'd like it to look like this, but I have no idea how it's actually going to work.
Right.
So what they rely on me is to go and find out that back information. Same thing happens for those designers that did the rover. They said, we want to have a rover on Mars, and we want it to do these type of mass spectrometer testings and things like that. So to do that, they have to sort of back into the process of how do you get to that point.
Sure.
And that's exactly what I had to do. They bring me a picture of whatever they want, and I have to go back into how to get that to work. And I use that with that Excelsius tool.
Okay. So before you kind of had that approach, what was things like there? Were there challenges that you faced, and how did you go about kind of?
Well, initially, one of the problems we had was the folks that work, that need the data, they were having a gap. There was a gap where, hey, I need X, but I'm getting all this data in a spreadsheet, and it just takes me forever to resort and find the data I'm really looking for.
Right.
And they couldn't get their point across to the folks that deliver the data to say, can you just give me this? I just don't want this. And it came to a point where one of our other centers had been using this Excelsius tool, and I saw what it did. I saw sort of how it worked, and I thought, well, maybe we can make that happen for these folks. And just by sheer stripping out the data and sitting down with the project managers and saying, look, what is it exactly that you need, and would this work for you? So we did a prototype, and we started to get sort of our prototype dashboard out, and they saw it, and they really liked it, and they thought, this not only works, this gives me exactly everything I need, now can you do this? Now can you do that?
Right.
And it started to spread throughout the organization, and people said, they'd go to a presentation, a normal presentation, they'd say, okay, you did everything you did last month, but what in the world was that you showed us this time? Because it's the same data, but now it looks so much different, and you're able to talk it. And just via word of mouth, it's just blown up. And now, I think there's 3 or 4 centers now that use it. They're now going and just building these massive things that started from this little sort of grain, hey, I'm not getting what I need, can you give me something that helps me figure it out? So,
are you surprised? Were you surprised by the enthusiasm for this? I mean, there's some learning curve, excuse me, there's some learning curve with it, right?
Yeah, well, the development side, there is a learning curve, but from the user's perspective, it's really, I want something that I can just sit down on a screen and click around. I don't need to know anything other than how to use a mouse to get the data I'm looking for. So that's sort of the mentality you go into building these things. You don't want to have to explain, to anyone. You want your center director or your CFO or whoever that likely does not know how to use many IT tools to sit down and say, hey, oh, okay, I get this. I get what I can get, and I get the data that I can get that I need just by clicking around. So. That was the mentality you go in with it, and it's been adapted pretty well. So that's I think the selling point, is that anybody can get this data that they're looking for.
Has it been cost effective as well for you? I mean, how have you rationalized those?
Well, the costs are very, very good for the individual licenses. For instance, we have the older Excelsius 2008 before they've switched now to the dashboards.
Okay.
But you were just buying a couple development licenses, and so that's very cost effective because your community might be big, but the developers are small. So you develop in 9 or 10 people that might have be doing these development dashboards, but your community might be 100 or 200 people that are now using it. So,
but from that 100 or 200, you must get a lot of requests. So how did you kind of throttle or manage that interest?
Well, luckily I've been working at NASA for about 10 years almost, and so I had a good upbringing of what to expect as far as the type of data they needed and where they're going with it. So you can get everything you need for those 100 or 200 people in a single dashboard pretty easily. It's not really that difficult. It's just understanding what does everybody need. What out of those 100 people can you answer all their questions in so many tabs in the dashboard?
Can you do it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
We're
actually working on, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We're actually now trying to develop much larger ones to do a much larger community where our audience might be 200 or 300 people now. we're talking now about trying to do the entire center, so rather than just a subsection, you're now trying to do the entire group, and that's the next step, and that's what we're currently working on.
So do you call it Excelsius or dashboards? Which one do you choose?
I wish I could call it dashboards, but it's so hard because Excelsius, I kind of grew up with the Excelsius name, but I do know that it's called dashboards now. So.
Right.
So I try to explain that, but at the same time, dashboards is sort of a generic term, right? I mean, you could have a dashboard that's built into a different tool, so it's kind of, you have to almost explain it then. Well, what is this dashboard built in? Dashboards. Well, it's dashboards build the dashboards, So
is this Excelsius or not?
Yeah, exactly. What's the name of the tool? It's kind of like who's on first.
Right. So self-service BI is something we hear a lot. Are you at that stage yet where you feel like the developers have enough time to satisfy that, but the users are able to do more and more with each passing day, or although you're embarking on a big project, maybe you'll...
Yeah, well, it's different. They're able to do more and more because they have the data they need now at their fingertips, rather than having to spend a lot of time saying, well, what does this number mean? What does this number mean? So a lot of questions have stopped. As far as self-service, the users are not going and building their dashboards.
They're not, okay.
We do have a kind of a closed-knit group that builds them. But you do find that a user who might become a subject matter expert in this tool will want to learn how to do it, and we will more than happy open up a development license for them to go and start building. So that has happened where a couple of folks have come from different organizations saying, hey, help me learn this, and then I'll go and sort of spread my own dashboard on my group.
So power users, in effect.
Right. Because that's the thing with Excelsius or dashboards, you don't really need to be a coder to do it. I mean, it helps, but you can be just a very good Excel user to build a dashboard if you want to do sort of a simplistic one.
So data governance is always an issue. So who owns the data? Like, how do you guys manage that?
Well, we do have an IT branch that sort of has IT security rules.
Okay.
But we don't really have there's not a whole lot of security being put on these dashboards because the data isn't. We don't have any really secure data that we need to lock down. So we haven't gone that step to go and put names and passwords into these things. We do house them on secure sites, but we don't go in so far as to say, we don't want someone seeing Joe Blow's, travel plan because it's not that sensitive data. But we have not yet made the leap to go put in something that is, something sensitive sensitive but unclassified is what we call it.
Right.
But we don't have any of that data in there at this point.
So a lot of these dashboards, the end result will end up being projects like the Mars Rover. Is that true? Like the success of these, budgeting and planning, all that comes right from these? Is that?
Well, certainly. I mean, NASA has been criticized in the past for some of their budget. They do a plan, and they might say it costs X dollars, but it comes in way over or way under budget. And a lot of that has to do with not only is it the technical challenges, because we're doing things we've never been done before, so that has some aspect to do with it, but it also has to do with how good is the initial plan, how good is the data that you're getting to track this, and how good is it that I don't realize at the end of the year that I'm way over plan or way under plan. I know as I'm going along. And that's what we've tried to alleviate. A lot of that uncertainty throughout the year, the dashboards alleviate a lot of that. So they know that, any time of the day, I'm over by this much or I'm under by this much. Where in the past it may be the end of the month or near the end of the year that they find out, oh man, I have all this extra money or I have overspent by this amount. So that's helped a lot.
So cutting down on some of the surprises that might have happened in the past.
So they know they can put that money to better use or scale back on what they're doing to come within costs. That's really the goal. To please the Congress. Obviously we need to make sure that if we say it's going to be X, it's going to be as close to X as we can get it, and that's what's helped so far.
That's a tough, I forgot that's who ultimately your stakeholders
Ultimately our stakeholder, yeah. Ultimately you're our stakeholders.
No, I guess that's true. You're doing a great job. The other thing we talked about on the phone was, you've rolled out these dashboards. They've been, well received. Is Excel still being used by a lot of people, or have you been able to wean some people? I mean, Excel are like the cockroaches, right? They're never going away, they'll be forever. But is the goal to somehow wean people off of Excel a little bit as you go with these, or? The
goal, I think, is to alleviate as much inefficiency as possible. And a lot of the inefficiency came from people that were comfortable in Excel providing just gobs of data to these folks that didn't want it. They didn't want all this stuff. So you're right, Excel is definitely not going away. People continue to use it, and they will always use it for as long as I can see. But what we can alleviate is the folks giving Excel reports and sort of propagating these reports out to these folks that don't want it. Right. So you're sort of getting sort of a gate where you can use Excel to do whatever you want to build your plans, to do whatever you need to build. But once it goes out to the customer, we're trying to stop that Excel, sort of massive spreadsheets and turn it into these dashboards that now I don't have to go drill through the data at the Excel level. I can go in and see it on hopefully a pretty dashboard.
Right. So as we close, your one piece of advice for other ASUG members, what you told people in your session about just getting started with the dashboards and Excel CS, what would be that advice?
You don't have to be afraid about the dashboards. If you know Excel, you can figure out how to build a dashboard. But the key is know what the end user really wants. You can build these pretty dashboards all day that do all these crazy functions, but if the end user doesn't use it, it's worthless.
Right.
So what I do is before I do any sort of dashboard, I sit with the user or the power users and I say, look, what do you want? Just give them a piece of paper and say, draw. If you could build anything you want, draw it on this piece of paper, and I'll try to make that happen as close to possible.
Is that like, do you remember that Simpsons episode where Homer designed the car, and it came out to be this huge, do they give you they give you these wild
Homer
things?
Simpson, that's a great reference. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, what's funny is that they're so desperate for this, like, just ease of use and just to get just simple data that they give me the easiest things possible. And I'll say, look, I can do that, no problem. What else do you? I have to ask them for more because they think that just giving them the easy stuff is hard, and it's not. So I've had dashboards that start with one page and end in 3 or 4.
Oh wow!
So it's one of those where when they start seeing how it works and they start seeing the data you can provide, they start and then trying to add more, and that's okay as long as you don't do too much to the dashboard.
Right. Well, Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate it.
For more interviews with ASUG members and SAP newsmakers, check out asugonline.com as well as our YouTube page, ASUG TV. And thank you for watching.